Hello, I'm Ed Raby, otherwise known as the Rabbit Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. You're free to like or dislike the video, so please feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. It's Friday. Well, it's actually Wednesday, but I'm doing the video for Friday today, just to kind of talk about a few issues. I do have one comment I want to address, but there's also some other things I need to talk about. First of all, you'll probably notice a technology upgrade. I did think I mentioned in one of my earlier videos this week that I was thinking about using my phone as a camera for one of these things. I got all the equipment for that this week, and I'm looking at learning how to use it this coming weekend. So that may actually come out this weekend, and right now I'm just getting used to the laptop that I have now that has a much better camera and I think a much better microphone. So that's been a real boon for me, and I really appreciate that. I'm trying to upgrade as much as I can, and so a technology upgrade, a very minor one, is going to be helpful. I mean, I got a very interesting little handheld tripod thing that I can, either a tripod stationary, or I can hold it in my hand and use my phone as a camera. And right now I'm working on how to hook up the microphone. So there's a technology upgrade coming for the channel. And so, just be aware of that. So if you notice things are a little different or in a different location, then that's why. I want to thank a commenter. We've been going back and forth on the issue of Pascal and Marcus Aurelius. And he did point out to me that the quotation often attributed to Marcus Aurelius may not be his. I think, though, that if you read Marcus Aurelius, and I'll admit I read Marcus Aurelius a long time ago. In my formative years, I read a lot of stuff of ancient writers because I was interested in that sort of thing. And it's been a while, but I think he's probably right that the common quote from Marcus Aurelius that's thrown around the internet is not exactly it. It's probably more of a paraphrase of some of his ideas. I'm going to continue to put Marcus Aurelius's name on it because I think it's inspired by him. If nothing else, it definitely has his flavor to it. So I would definitely keep the idea. To me, the idea, though, still stands sound. I don't like Pascal's wager. I'm not going to place a bet. If I'm going to bet on anything, I'm going to bet on myself and following the virtues that I believe in. I suppose there is something to be said. What does constitute a good life? I think there are some things that human beings do find objectionable by their nature, but mostly because I think they don't lead to survival. I think what they lead to is a negative situation where survival is in jeopardy, not only for the person, but for the group. I think we've also learned a lot of social things simply because of survival. It's better to help each other out because you never know when you might be in a jam. And so then you need help. So I think this natural empathic helping each other out, doing good to others is more a product of our human nature as we have evolved to fit the puddle that we're in, so to speak. If you understand that analogy from Douglas Adams, we have found out that, the best way to survive is to cooperate with each other and treat each other with respect. Because if we do that and other people do that to us, then we all have our chance to survive and do well. I don't need a God for that. I don't need a God to tell me that that's something that I should do. What I do need is to understand my own purpose, and I come up with that for myself. I simply am saying that when it comes to Pascal's wager, I prefer to get up away from the roulette wheel, put the coin in my pocket, and if there's a ferryman at the end of it, I'll pay the ferryman with it. But if there isn't, I'm going to use that to build my life the best life I can for myself. And yes, that is a little subjective. When I say morality is subjective, I also believe that through that subjectivity, we can come up with objective guidelines that we all can adhere to. There's these things called governments and laws, and that's kind of where that comes from, is we're all trying to find a better way to get along and a better way to cooperate with each other that leads to our own mutual survival. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. I didn't agree necessarily with everything this person said, but I enjoyed the conversation. It's just one of those things where, you just feel that what really should happen and what should be there is not as cut and dry as you would like to think. And I think my problem with Pascal is that it's not a really good argument for God. It's not really designed to be. I do have a theory I'm going to run by this commenter. I'm kind of on the side, kind of looking him up. I'm trying to remember the name, and I'm having a hard time. And I'm just going to be very human and say I'm trying to remember the name. So looking at it. Oh, yes, the scapegoat mechanism. Yes. Thank you, sir. I am so sorry I messed up your name, but I want to get this video out. And Friday videos tend to be a little bit more off the cuff. I'm kind of talking into a microphone. If any of you are familiar with the Mighty Jingles, a YouTuber that does World of Warship and World of Tanks videos, he kind of does this with his mingles with jingles. And to me, the Friday discussion is kind of like that. It's more of a freewheeling thing where I'm just talking and addressing comments and things like that. But the scapegoat mechanism and me have been going back and forth on this discussion. I don't think we're going to come to any mutual agreement other than I think Pascal was a great mathematician. I think some of his stuff is very well done. I think both of us need to recognize, and anybody else who's been watching this discussion needs to recognize, that Pascal did not publish his wager. And I wonder if there's a reason for that. I wonder if even he realized that there might be flaws to it, which is why he didn't really push it to be published. And so maybe it's an unfinished work in a sense. I don't know. I'm not an expert in Pascal, so if somebody else can kind of show me that would be great. But I don't think I have my suspicion that maybe even he realized its weaknesses, being as smart a man as he was. And I think he maybe wanted to keep working on it. I mean, he was a very devout believer. Maybe he was trying to find an ironclad reason to bet on God, and he realized that some parts of it were not the same. The last thing I want to deal with, actually, before I deal with that, I guess I would like some response in the comment section. This is a little bit interesting experience, more of an off-the-cuff thing. I try to keep my videos grounded in my personal experience with being an atheist. And I currently go to a gym. I work out. I mostly lift weights at the gym. I'm looking forward to spring because I have a backpack in the thing. I have this new video camera system that I can take with me using my phone. And so I'm kind of chomping at the bit here in Western Michigan, trying to figure out when the snow finally does and truly goes away and it gets warm enough, I want to hit the hiking trails and start putting some mileage on some new boots I got. So part of me gets out there, but I was at the gym the other day and I was going into the shower and after a workout and getting ready for work. And I found this little bugger right here. I've got it upside down. There we go. Living water. And I was my normal response to Christian tracts these days is to throw them in the trash. I find them usually very stupid and boring. And most of the time they're very poor apologetic, very much an appeal to emotion. But they don't really address some of the more rational issues of whether Jesus existed or God existed. This one is kind of an appeal to a concept, a moral concept, and involving corruption and purity. So, that's a whole different discussion in and of itself. I guess what I'd be interested in the comments, I know there's another channel that does chick tracts, and they go through the chick tracts and they put voices to them and make fun of them, and then they talk about why Jack Chick was such an idiot at times when it came to things. He just didn't really know what he was doing. And but he had a great track because it was always cartoons and they were always cool. And I have to commend the artist of Jack Chick's tracks. I don't know if it was Jack himself, but he was a very good comic book artist, very solid in my opinion. But some of his point of views were a little bit bullshit, if you ask me. So there's that. But if anybody's interested in me, like if I find tracks, you want me to go through them and tell you why I think they're full of shit, I'm going to give a test run on this. I'm going to use this track for a special video that I'll work on this weekend coming up. I do have Saturday and Sunday off, so I'm going to be learning how to use my new camera equipment. I'm going to be experimenting with that. But I think I also might do a video on this little track that I just threw over here. One other thing to talk about today, deconversion issues. Recently, a friend of mine and my wife's, mostly my wife's, was involved in a very serious car accident. And somebody asked me now that I'm an atheist, what I do about that. I said, what do you mean, what do I do? The standard Christian response when we're going to pray. We're going to pray for complete recovery. We're going to pray for, this person to be all right. And of course, you shoot the crapshoot with it. Sometimes the person dies. Well, then it was time for them to go home. That's easy to say when it's an older person. It's, when you stand at the casket of an 8-year-old boy, that's a little bit different. And yes, I've done that. It becomes a little bit interesting to say, well, gee, God, you have all the time in the universe. You're timeless. Why don't you just let people live a full life, all of us? But that doesn't happen. Why don't you intervene? And you have to begin to conclude that either God doesn't give a shit or there isn't one when it comes to things like this. But I know people like to think that they're doing something when they say, I'll pray for them. Okay. Here's my real problem with that. And it comes down to this. The fact of the matter is my wife's friend was treated by a ton of doctors and healthcare professionals that study her particular problem, her trauma, the things that she's gone through. They've gone to years and years of medical school. They've studied the position all the time. And what happens is, they don't get the credit because somebody's saying, well, we prayed and she got healed. The doctor operated it and she got better too. The nurses did their care thing. They were watchful. The surgeons did their thing. This is great expertise. I always love people that are like that. I say, well, okay, there's this guy down the road that, he's pretty good at, cutting open pigs and, cows. He's a butcher. But he really, really believes in God, and he really believes in the power of prayer. In fact, he's one of the most faithful prayer warriors I've ever met. I think you could save a ton of money by going down to that butcher and having him do the surgery. He'd know how to cut you open, and all you'd have to do is make sure he's praying and asking for guidance, and lo and behold, you should get better, and it would save you a ton of money. And all of a sudden, those same people that believe in the power of prayer and power of faith, oh no, I'm going to go to a real doctor. Is it possible that they know it's BS? Is it really possible that they know that it's really BS? The real problem I have with prayer is God always wins. You're never allowed to question the end result, because If the person dies, they needed to go home to be Jesus. If they recover, it was the power of God. I don't know where the power of God is in the thousands of children that died today from starvation. Totally preventable by God. One of the most cruel and painful ways to die if you really study it. It's like, holy crap. And little children die of this every day. Malnutrition, maltreatment, lack of medical care. Holy crap. This idea, God, your God seems to only be present in certain circumstances and only when you think he's present. Seems a little bit bad. Now, apologetic, my own criticism of all that aside, what does that do for me? Well, when I hear somebody's in an accident, there's a couple of things I ask myself. Can I actually do something to help? I think saying I'm going to pray for you is the world's largest cop-out now. I think it's like you have I'm thinking of you and I hope you're doing okay. You can't just say that. You got to say that you're praying for him, because then it sounds like you're actually doing something when you're not doing shit. Okay, you're not doing anything. You're mumbling some words to an imaginary character. And that's just the truth of it. And suddenly that shifts me when I'm thinking about that. How can I help? How can I actually help that person? And I come up with the answer. I said, well, I can't really do anything. There'd be better hands if they were taken to a medical center and put in the hands of great doctors. And so it's really out of my hands. And I think that's really the issue. I think when we say we're praying for somebody, there's two things going on there. One, we want them to think that we are actually doing something. And we want ourselves to think we're actually doing something. And when in truth, we're just uncomfortable because we're empathic by nature as human beings. We're just really uncomfortable feeling like we can't do anything. And so we say we're praying. For me, I've had to really learn to live with my discomfort level. There's a lot of things I live with now as a deconversion thing that I don't have pat answers for. I live with the fact that I'm often powerless to do anything about a situation. I can't go into a situation and do anything about, I just mentioned all the starving kids and the malnourished and medical kids. I don't have the means to help them. Okay. If I did, I would. I'm glad that I'm in a position where I don't need that. And so I'm not burdening the rest of the world, but I don't live high on the hog either. My issue at that point is, can I do something? And then I have to ask myself the question, will it actually help? I think this is a second question that people don't really ask when they think about whether they're going to do something to help. Because I think a lot of people think that they're helping, and they're not really helping at all. They're actually aggravating the situation. And that kind of, you can have really good intentions and cause a great deal of harm. Another deconversion issue. I was recently hit with the forgiveness issue again. In my Christian days, I forgave a lot. I really took Jesus's words about forgiveness to heart. Forgive everything so your Heavenly Father will forgive you. Pretty interesting implication there, by the way. God is so loving, he forgives everything. Not if you don't forgive yourself. That's what the Bible says. Okay. These days, when somebody asks me to forgive them, or somebody does something wrong to me, I ask myself, have they done what is necessary to earn my forgiveness? Because I don't think my forgiveness is given away free anymore. It's not a freebie. I'm not a forgiveness whore anymore. Okay, where I just give my forgiveness away to anybody. I give it to people who actually come to me and say they're sorry, and B, offer some recompense for what they did. Then you'll get my forgiveness. Until then, sorry, I'm just going to keep my distance, move along. I don't get bent out of shape about stuff as much as I used to. These days, I actually tend to spend a lot more time realizing there's a lot of things I can't do anything about. There are certain situations that I want justice for that may never, ever get justice, ever. And I have to be good with that. I have to be content with that. And I am. And it's a much easier situation. As far as forgiveness goes, there have been some people that have come and asked for my forgiveness, and I've asked for theirs, and we've done some things. We've actually done some things to show that we were sorry and show that we wanted to make it right. There's other people that they've done me wrong, and they haven't come to me. And no, I mean, I have one guy that I now would consider an enemy, and he better pray to whatever God he believes in and hope that God is real, because, if I'm put in the same situation, I'd pull that trigger. And people go, well, that's hateful. That's not really empathic. I said, well, except it's religion that causes people to do harm to one another. It's religion that puts our actual natural survival instincts on the side. Forgiveness is fine as long as a person realizes that they have done something wrong and need to be held accountable and are willing to be held accountable. I think a lot of forgiveness, unfortunately, causes people to not be held accountable. And that's the real problem that I have with it. There's no accountability. There's no restitution. There's no, how do we make this right? Some religions have that, but not all of them. But the blanket forgiveness that Christianity requires out of people that practice it, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I have too much honor for that. It's one of my favorite quotes. I have pride now, and I think pride is an okay thing. Okay, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, because when you're proud, if you're too stinking proud, you won't steal, you won't kill. You're proud of yourself, and therefore you have honor. You're going to behave in a way that is honorable so that you don't harm somebody else unnecessarily. And you have shame. So when you do something wrong, you want to fix it and you want to make it right. Forgiveness allows you to live without both honor and shame, and thus without pride. There are certain things, I'm sorry, if a woman gets raped, she's well within her rights of hating a rapist for the rest of his life. Now, I don't know if that's going to do her any good, but I don't think forgiveness is the answer either. I think she has every right to ask for justice for that. But at the same time, eventually she's got to figure out how to move and get on. And there are going to be simply some things you're just never going to get justice for. It's these kind of mentalities that you go through when you're deconverting, where you're trying to figure out how to think about things. You've thought about things and felt about things the same way for so long. I mean, for me, Christianity was a 40-year thing. For me, Christianity as a minister was a 20-year thing. There's certain ways that I taught and lived and moved forward in my life and thought about things that are no longer true. And now I have to reprocess stuff and take things that I took for granted and realize it's just not always that easy. So, when you talk about deconversion to somebody that has deconverted from Christianity and said become something else, or an atheist or a Gnostic like myself, there's a lot of deconversion issues there that you need to realize that the person is going through on a lot of levels. It's not just a mental thing, it's an emotional thing. It's a society thing. Because atheists are not liked for no damn good reason other than the McCarthy era did a real good job at connecting us with communism and demonizing us as godless communists. And, quite honestly, now I'm about as far away from being a communist as you can be, I think. I'm pretty close to being an anarcho-capitalist. So I just don't have that mentality anymore. And so the idea that somebody is a certain economics or political strata simply because they're an atheist, it just doesn't ring a bell anymore. So there's that. I just wanted to, kind of throw those out. I've been thinking about those for a little bit. And it's kind of more of the freewheeling nation, or Fridays anyway, that we're trying to, in good form, trying to look at life and say, okay, these are some of the answers, from a perspective of somebody who has deconverted, that there's things that change. I want to thank you all for being along here on a Friday. This is week 7. I did want to mention one more thing before I left. Last week, I kind of talked about how the fact I hadn't gained any new subscribers. This week, I picked up 4 more. I'm up to 13 as of today, Wednesday. And so I want to thank you all for that. As you can see, comments and the things that happen in my life have a way of influencing Friday's videos. I respond to comments whenever I can. Sometimes you're just going to get a like, because I like what you had to say, and I don't really think it deserves comment. You should also ask a direct question of me anytime if you want to understand something. What would you like me? And you can always comment on what you would like me to do. Videos are uploaded Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't tolerate name calling. I tolerate vigorous debate where you're trying to prove somebody's foolish. Just don't call them a fool. There's a difference. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit your notifications, and hopefully I can someday convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Raby, the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.